Hey, Matt Weaver here. In this video, we're going to show how we repaired this foil board. This is a 6.5 mid-lake hydrofoil board, and I dropped it on its nose when I was working on it, installing the deck pad, and crushed it in. And so we're going to show you how I repaired that. So I had a tragic accident happen. I was working on this board and had it on the rack with the weight on it, and it got unbalanced and came down and smashed the nose. I was so upset. So what we're going to do here is we're going to repair it. We're actually going to use Bondo in this one. What you do need to be aware of is most boards have a polystyrene core, including this one, and Bondo will melt that. But since there's no exposed polystyrene here, I can get away with filling that dent with the Bondo. So I've mixed up some Bondo. I'm getting that applied in there. I want to apply more than I need, and then shave or sand back to the right side. So that's what I'm doing here. I flipped the board over so now gravity is working with me instead of against me, and applying that Bondo. One of the nice things about Bondo, and one of the reasons I went with Bondo on this, is it cures relatively quickly. So within about 10 minutes of actually putting this on, I'm able to move to the next step. Within 40 minutes to an hour, I'm able to sand it, and I'm able to keep going relatively quickly. Downside on Bondo is it is heavy. It's a heavy filler. So it's been about 10 minutes, and now I can come in with a cheese grater or a Sureform, and I can shave back the excess Bondo from that repair, or excess filler from the repair. So just using that cheese grater real carefully, working down and getting level with the board, and shrinking that repair area down to the actual size that it needs to be. Again, nice and easy to work with. This is pretty convenient, fast, and then this does really cut about like cheese at this stage. It's kind of rubbery and makes nice shavings. So that's what we're looking for. We want to see nice shavings coming off of there, not too hard to do that, and not so soft that it's actually gumming up the Sureform blade. So I'll work that down, and once I've got that pretty close and I'm happy with it, I'm going to let it continue to cure until it's hard enough to sand, which again at room temperature, about an hour, 40 minutes to an hour, we'll let that go for. So, and again, Bondo is a polystyrene based, or it's a polyester resin based filler. So it has a polyester resin and then talc and other additives for the filler part to thicken it up and then make it easy to work with. But because it is a polyester based resin or a styrene based resin, it will melt styrene foam. So you can't do this directly on the styrene foam. You need some kind of barrier in between the foam and the Bondo to do it. Like I said, in this case, we smashed that nose in and not put a gaping hole in it. So I let that cure for about an hour. Now I'm using a 40 grit sandpaper on a rubber sanding block, and I'll just carefully blend that in until it takes up the space or the shape of what used to be there before I drop the board on the floor and crush the nose in. So with any repair like this, you don't want to leave just the putty repair area on its own. So, and as you can see, as I'm sanding on top here, and I knew this would be an issue, there's a little bulge in that glass, and so I'm actually going to sand through that glass and create a thin spot there, where if we just put that in the water, it'd actually soak up water. So what I was saying is with any repair like this, where you've done a putty, you do want to cover that with fiberglass to seal that up and prevent water intrusion and prevent that putty from actually coming out. So what I'm looking at here is, can I take the glass and put it on the bias and wrap it without having to cut it? And yes, I can, and you'll see me do that here. So next thing I'm going to do is tape off the repair area so I can glass onto the tape and then trim back and just make everything a little bit cleaner and neater. And so I've got that all taped off. I'm putting a couple extra pieces of tape there to avoid a sharp corner. And then next thing I'll do is I will cut some glass, and I'm going to set that glass on the bias. What that means is I've got it on there about 45 degrees to the weave, and that way it'll stretch and conform around the nose. And so I'm happy with that. I'm going to cut that right there. I'm actually going to tape that to my taped off area so it doesn't go anywhere on me. And then I'm going to do 2 layers in part because that will give me some glass I can sand into, and inevitably in a repair like this you are going to sand into the glass, and it also matches the lamb schedule of the board. So here's the second layer going down. I'm going to use a little bit of epoxy. In this case I used 50 grams of resin and 22 grams of hardener. Probably could have gotten away with about half of that. So to give you an idea, that's not very much, by the way. So get the resin in the cup. I've weighed it and mixed it for 2 minutes, and now I'm just using a 1-inch chip brush to apply it. Gonna apply it relatively heavy and let it soak through the glass. And you know, temperatures today mid 60s, lower 70s, so the resin actually is flowing pretty good. If it was wintertime, might want to heat it or maybe apply some resin on the board directly and then on the glass to get everything to saturate. But there is really no hurry. We got plenty of working time on a repair this size. And so I'm going to get that wet out, apply the resin on there, let it soak into the cloth. And it's 2 layers of 6-ounce cloth, so it's not, you know, super thick, so it actually saturates pretty quickly. The glass should go clear. You should be able to see right through it, especially once it is adhered down to the substrate. What I'm noticing here is I've got a lot of extra glass, but now that I know how big an area I need to saturate, I can come in and trim that. So I'll grab my shears and come in and trim that real quick so I don't have that extra glass pulling things down and causing problems. So just going to trim through there. The nice thing about all metal shears is you can solvent wash them. So if you do get a little bit of resin on them, you can clean them with solvent, you can dip them in solvent. The handles won't melt, unlike with shears that have plastic handles. So, and now I'm just going to continue working that using resin on the brush and using the brush as a flexible squeegee. I'll work that back onto the tape and making sure that, you know, where I cross from the board to the tape is really well laid down and there's no air bubbles. So nice and gentle, kind of slow, does the trick. Just be patient and keep working that bit by bit, and glass will, you know, this weave, at any rate, will conform to some pretty complex curves. In this case, this really isn't super complex, but just patiently working that down, making sure there's no air bubbles. You want to be able to see, and you can kind of see it there, the texture of the fabric. You don't want so much resin on there that you can't see that, because that will cause problems. The glass will just float and it won't really do what it's supposed to do. So again, nice and patient, checking that I'm down at all the edges, checking that I'm down at the transitions and at the point. Those are going to be the toughest areas because the glass will want to spring back a little bit. So you can see in this video the texture there. That's what you want. So we're going to let that cure up. If it was 80 degrees, probably about 45 minutes. Like I said, when I did this, it was about 65 degrees. So hour and a half or so before it was tacky enough that I could trim it. Now, if you don't get to trim it while it's still rubbery, you can sand it, you know, so it's not the end of the world. But pretty nice if you can hit it when it's still rubbery. So here it is. It's a little rubbery, and I can work through that with the utility knife and get that trimmed off and then pull that excess off of there. So now I'm not having to do a lot of sanding or grinding when I get to the next stage. And, doing that real careful. Don't want to actually cut through the board and into the foam. Just want to cut deep enough that I can peel off that excess resin, or not resin, but excess fiberglass, and not have to do extra sanding. So here we go. Picking that up. Looking for, sometimes there'll be a strand or two that's not quite cut all the way. So watch that as you peel it, and you can see that resin kind of rubbery, stringy. That's what we want. And just carefully going to work off the excess there. And that's good. So now I am going to put a hot coater on it, or a fill coat. Mixed up, what did I do there? 25, I did 25 grams of resin and 11 grams of hardener. And just with the brush, gonna work a coat of resin onto there to help give us a little bit of something to sand into when we go to sand it. And work, top, bottom, and sides, work it in multiple directions, get that as even as possible. So here is the hot coated part. You can see there's no texture on the glass, and the next stage will be to sand this and ferret in and then paint it.